So we are going to be looking at today something called Shishiko, which is an ancient Japanese technique, kind of embroidery, but it's a lot more than that as well. It's something that the kind of peasant class would do to make their clothes last longer. So once something broke, or to add layers to make it warmer, the wives of the farmers or whatever they would do this kind of repetitive stitches to make clothes last longer. It's a very meditative technique, and there's a lot. I say it's just a running stitch, but it's a whole lot more than that. You get beautiful designs, different grids. You can create your own designs. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at that. And related to that is something called Boro. So Boro isn't a technique, it refers to the name of the cloth, pieces of fabric. When something would break, you'd add another patch on and you'd Shishiko stitch over the top of it, and you'd just kind of build up and build up. And today we look at these as being really beautiful, and at the time they were kind of done as like a means to an end, really. It's a whole rich history about Shishiko, and there are lots of people who are much more experts than me, so if you're really interested in it, I would definitely go and look it up. But I'm just going to show you some of the basics to get started. It's a beautiful mending technique you can use for stuff, or you could create the cloth and turn it into something different as well. But I just wanted to share with you a little bit of Boro mending that I've done before, because I think with Shishiko there's lots of books and literature about it these days, and I think the essence of it is to remember that it is like a mending technique, and don't worry if your lines are a bit wonky. You're practicing. Here I've not followed a grid at all. I just wanted to mend the holes in my, it's like a footstool poof thing that had lots of holes coming in it, so it's a few years old. So this is Boro in action. So for your Shishiko stitching, you want the fabric that you're going to be sewing onto. You'll often see it's kind of traditional Shishiko in blue and white, and that's because at the time lots of things were indigo dyed, so it kind of had this rich dark blue dye, and then it would be sewn with white thread. But you can obviously do it in any fabric you want to, and thread colour. You want something to be able to mark your design onto the fabric with. This is dressmaker's carbon paper, sometimes called dressmaker's tracing paper. You can't really see it because it's white, but it's kind of chalky on one side, and that's the side that you lay down. You obviously need a needle. You can get Shishiko needles. What you want is a long embroidery needle with quite a fairly big eye to be able to get the thread through, but also nice and sharp thread. You can use an embroidery thread. You can also get traditional Shishiko thread as well. A template can be really handy, so you might have a template that you want to follow. I've sent you a few of those. So you're going to need your scissors, a biro is really handy to mark your design on, and a ruler to keep your lines nice and straight. You also might want a white pencil, or something. If you're doing dark, you could do a normal pencil to mark any extra lines in if you need them. And for Shishiko, you do not use an embroidery hoop. So Shishiko has there's lots of information about Shishiko. You can get whole books on it. Lots of YouTube channels and all kinds of things. I'll link some if anyone's really interested. But what you want to do first really is get used to the technique. So I'd start really simply, giving you a little grid template. Use some pins. I'm just going to use my needle to attach that onto the fabric. And then push quite hard onto the fabric. Just make sure it's marked. Yes, I can see that kind of well enough. Actually, it's better to do it on a hard surface. Move my fabric out of the way. It looks pretty in my background, but it's making it harder to mark it with. Yeah. So when you're ready to start your Shishiko, have your thread quite long. I often say not too much longer than your arm, just because you get in a bit more of a tangle. I always thread my needle by holding the thread in between my thumb and my finger, and then lowering the needle onto it. So we're not going to do a knot with our Shishiko. We are going to sew in one direction. So I'm going to start going this way, and then I'm going to come back up that way, because you want to overstitch to get your thread in. So stitch length, again, I feel like there's no right or wrong. I've seen some people say that the stitches should be even, so the gaps between them the same. I've seen some people say that the gaps between them should be half the sizes of the stitch. It's kind of something you kind of have to work out. So we're going to treat this as the back of the. This is going to be the front. This is going to be the back where our drawing is. So it doesn't matter that maybe you've got a few ends and things going on. So we're going to go through the stitch that you've just done in this little wiggle. Then we're going to come down, back up out of the next one, and then into this next one where you've just been, and then back out where we started. And then we're going to stitch normally. So I'm trying to keep my stitches here about half a centimetre probably, and I'm trying to keep them within these lines. So every time I come up, I'm hitting this line here. So I've got 3 stitches in this little gap. It's kind of, Shishiko is kind of about getting the rhythm of the stitches. So you'll see I'm building up the stitches onto my needle, and I'm even going to go all the way to the top of my grid here. And then you pull the fabric, you hold the needle, hold onto the thread with a little clamp with your finger, and then you pull on the fabric and pull it through. Now it's going to scrunch, but every time you do a line, you come out and pull it. So you're smoothing it like this. And then I'm going to move over to the next row. And what a nice tip actually that I've seen some people say is to leave a bit of a loop at each end. And here, so now I'm just practicing trying to get my stitches the same length as before, so it's easier to hold it like this. And use your thumbnail as a bit of a stopper for the needle. So turning the corners, you want to leave a little bit of slack like this. It will just help you get the right tension. You don't want to have too much as you're going along. If you feel like you've gone a bit wrong anywhere, take your needle off the thread and then you can use the needle to pull. Remember to smooth it every time you do it, and leave. So mine's getting a bit tight here, so I'm just going to try and pull. Pull on this loop here. Ooh. So I can loosen this one here as well. So you can carry on practicing with that. So when you're ready to end, if you knot it in the same way, so you're going through one of, well, not knot it, finish it in the same way, you're going through and just repeating the stitches that you've done, and then you can cut off the taily bit just to secure it. The designs have different meanings. There's a really nice one that kind of looks like fish scales, which is a really nice one. You'll see kind of repeated in different ways. It's very interesting to look up the history and where the designs come from. So it has a really rich cultural history in Japan, so if you get really into it, I just think it's good to know where it's come from and be respectful of the culture that it's come from. I am by no means an expert in it, so do have a look at other Shishiko videos, books, history, if you want to know more. Then you can download templates. There's some free templates available online, or you can buy them on Etsy. You can even buy fabric that has actually has the stitches on it for you. Just check it before you take it off. Make sure all of the bits have come through, because obviously it's really hard to get it lined up again once you've done it. I'm just going to look at it before I take all the pins out. Yep, that's transferred quite well. If it hasn't transferred so well, you could get like a white pencil and draw in the rest if you need to. Draw in that little line there. So corners and junctions are quite interesting in Shishiko. Probably the hardest thing to master. Some people will say it's best to have evenly spaced stitches and it doesn't really matter what they look like. Others will adjust the size of their stitches, so when you come to a point, each point is kind of evenly spaced from that edge. It's something I'm still learning as well. I'll show you a couple of tips with these corners and junctions coming up to it. So some people will then adjust their stitch length at that very end corner, and then you want a gap, so you don't want to start again there. We're going to come back up here and then carry on. So you have a space where there are lots of lines overlapping. It's about having the skill and precision to kind of end in the right place. So we're going to have a little jump across the middle here. Oh, I need to get enough stitches, so I'm going to undo a bit. because we want to jump here. Jump again. So the back is going to have this crossover situation. But the front should have a kind of evenly spaced circle around it. You might also want to cut other bits of fabric up to practice making some Boro cloth. It's good if you've got holes in your jeans or something. You can do Shishiko patches as well, so you kind of put your patch on. I've folded it in here, you don't have to, and then sew over the top of it, and it will just strengthen the fabric where there's a hole. You may also want to design your own Shishiko pattern. So you could start, if you wanted to do circles, maybe get some things to draw around, start with a ruler, and then you might want to do it with a fabric pencil or something that you can iron out. Or you could, this is just a white colouring pencil really. Geometric like this, you might find curved lines. You can do all kinds of things with it. Use this to add to my design.